Good evening and welcome to Friday Vespers for July 17th. This evening we're going to be talking about change. If you'll remember, last Friday I mentioned the Serenity Prayer and how we may find ourselves reciting it more than usual these days, most especially as we see our world changing around us more quickly than we ever could have imagined. You might find it interesting to note that when Reinhold Niebuhr first wrote the prayer, it was in a little bit different order and wording. He wrote, "Father, give us the courage to change what must be altered, serenity to accept what cannot be helped, and the insight to know the one from the other." As you have no doubt experienced in your own life, we each experience a variety of changes, many of which are not of our own making, many of which leave us reeling and feeling out of control, perhaps even wounded and grieving. And in times of stress and chaos, we cling to scriptures of comfort, such as Psalms 18:2, the Lord is my rock, my salvation, and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield, and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. And we give God thanks for those who came before us, who found hope and courage as they navigated the turmoil of their worlds. We also learn from others who've experienced pain and those who've triumphed as they were met with challenges. Our reading today comes from Margaret Jensen's book, a sweet little book I picked up years ago called First We Have Coffee. She's reading from her mother's diary, which she and her siblings sneaked into when they were young. From the pages of the Black Book emerged my mother, Elvine Johansson, a 15-year-old girl standing on the deck of the majestic ocean liner, the United States. Her tears said goodbye to Norway's town of Lista, and in the backfields of her mind, she planted happy memories of the midnight sun, fjords, and fishing boats. Perhaps the ocean would roll away the painful memories of childhood. Like waves that beat against a ship, bitterness pounded against Elvine. As long as the waves stayed on the outside, there was no danger. But bitterness, like waves, brought destruction when allowed to penetrate walls. She set her sights on the future. In America, she would see her beautiful, mysterious mother and her beloved brother Joe, who had preceded her across the ocean. As the sun swept across the water and the moon made a silvery highway over the waves, there was time to think. Someday she would learn why her mother had fled to America and left Joe and her when she was only 5 years old. Deep in Elvine's heart lay the poignant memories of crying out, "More, more, mother, mother." But her cries had gone unheeded. Her sobbing mother had continued walking away from her, never to return, and her austere aunt had severely scolded, "Do not call her More, call her Tilda." With a toss of her head, Elvine had defiantly declared her ownership. "Mean More, my mother." With trembling hands, Elvine clutched her knit shawl around her shoulders and followed her fellow immigrants onto the deck. The majestic ocean liner was easing into the mouth of the New York harbor. Ahead of her stood the lovely lady, the Statue of Liberty. Ahead of her lay the hope of land and glory. The next day, Elvine felt small and alone in the notorious clamor of Ellis Island's endless inspections and army of officials. But it was all erased from her mind when she saw her beautiful, rebellious mother who had defied tradition and sailed to America. Someday she would learn the rest of the story. Today it was enough to hear, "Min chère Elvine," my dear Elvine. As we close this evening, let's pause to breathe in God's Spirit, who helps us navigate the often strange, confusing, challenging waters of change. Spirit who can instill within us a sense of adventure so that we might make our own way through our days with courage and anticipation. Let us breathe out all that closes our minds, stifles our creative thinking, and fills us with fear, causing us to freeze in our thoughts and our tracks when we most need to move forward. As you move throughout your weekend, may Spirit breathe at least a wee bit of enthusiasm into you so that you might baby step or giant step your way into whatever comes next your way. Have a great weekend.